enough stock for affordable housing. Supply and demand issues, it's just not affordable. So I first want to thank you. I want to thank Senator Young and Senator Cantwell on the low-income housing tax credit. It's an extremely important tool. It's the strongest tool we have to date. And in and of itself, it's not enough. So it's usually combined with historic tax credits or some other stakeholders' investments in order to move forward with an affordable housing plan in our community. So I know in Maryland, we've been able to use the low-income housing tax credits, the historic tax credits. We've had philanthropic help, all the nonprofit community, all combined in order to deal with affordable housing in our community. But one of the things we could do is try to preserve communities so that we can maintain affordable housing that's commensurate with the income of the people that live in that community. And that's been a challenge. That's why I thank you, Mr. Chairman. I thank Senator Young in regards to the introduction of the Neighborhood Home Improvement Act, because it's aimed at that area where we have strong neighborhoods. We have the income of that neighborhood, the people that live there, are not adequate in order to renovate or to construct or to buy homes in that community. So the Neighborhood Home Investment Act is aimed at dealing with that. So, Mrs. Scott, if I might, I'm going to start with you. Tell me how you think such an appraisal gap credit can help in regards to maintaining the strength of communities and dealing with the wealth gap that we have here in America.
Thank you, Senator, and thank you for your sponsorship of neighborhood homes. The bottom line is that in the communities that we're talking about, the cost to build far exceeds the value in the market, and so there's just no way to get at building these homes without addressing the gap. And so the credit enables us to do that. This credit will enable us to probably build around construct and rehab about 500,000 homes over the next decade. That's a big deal in these communities where lower income families will benefit, both urban and rural communities. And many of these neighborhoods are already suffering from the blight of vacancy and dilapidated homes. So it will go a long way to improve conditions in the neighborhood. We estimate about $125 billion of total development activity. That's going to help in terms of local economy, $26 billion in federal tax revenue, and another $12 billion in state and local government revenue. So this credit is going to spur the market and then generate revenue, tax revenue across the layers of government.
I thank you for that. I want to talk a little bit about the wealth gap, because home ownership is one of the areas that we deal with trying to reduce the wealth gap in this country. Tell us how home ownership can help us deal with the wealth gap and preserving communities.
Right. Well, as we know, that housing is the primary source of wealth building for generations, and for many of the families who cannot afford a home, they don't have any other opportunity unless you own a business in order to generate wealth. So enabling first-time home buyers, first-generation home buyers, many of whom are in Black and Latin communities. The tax credit is really aimed at the census tracts that in many cases are majority minority communities. And so it'll also attract, we believe, families from those census tracts who would benefit from this credit and be able to buy a home.
I want to move to a second subject, which deals with the urgency of action by Congress, and I appreciate so many of my colleagues that have legislation here. I can tell you the waiting lists in Maryland are long for affordable housing. The options are not really bright today. So just any of them on the panel, talk a little bit about the urgency of us dealing with these issues. So we know we missed an opportunity in the last Congress. How urgent is it for Congress to strengthen the tools?
I'm happy to take that on, Senator. Again, coming out of COVID, we really put a spotlight on the importance of housing for health and for all sorts of other outcomes. People are still struggling now, and it takes a long time to put these deals together. I worked on them for many years as a lawyer myself. You have to start today in order to get housing. Frankly, if you enacted this bill today, it would take 3, 4, 5 years to truly see the housing on the ground to serve residents. We know we're already falling behind. So if we don't act very quickly to bring more resources to the table, we're going to fall even further behind in the future. And the population of our nation is still growing. We are anticipating we're at 330, 340 million Americans today. We're going to be at 400 million Americans by the middle of this century. They all need to live somewhere. So we really need to start this now.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Senator Tillis